Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For new subscribers, click the notification bell so that way you get notified each time I drop a video. My name is S.A. Anibo. I'm talking about comparative anatomy of the integumentary system of vertebrates. This is part 1 of that lecture. The integumentary system is the largest system of the body. It's made up of two parts. You have the cutaneous membrane made up of the epidermis, which is the superficial epithelium, and then the dermis, which is the underlying connective tissue with blood vessels. There are also accessory structures in addition to the cutaneous membrane. The accessory structures include hair, nails, and exocrine glands. The illustration is right there for you to see. The skin is made up of 3 layers. The epidermis, which is the outmost layer of epithelial tissue. The dermis is much thicker than the epidermis and is made up of a thick layer of connective tissue, which may be 1 to several layers thick as regarding the cell layers. The epidermis contains the blood vessels, nerves, glands, and auxiliary structures. Deep to the epidermis, the dermis contains the blood vessels, nerves, glands, and auxiliary structures. Deep to the dermis, you have the hypodermis. The hypodermis is the layer below the epidermis, made up of loose connective tissue and adipose tissue. The illustration is right there. The epidermis most superficial, then deep to it you have the dermis, and the deepest of the 3 layers is the hypodermis. Let's recall the functions of the skin. Protection is one function of the skin. The skin serves very important protective function. It serves as a physical barrier between the external environment and the body. So it protects the body from any form of insult or injury, be it mechanical, chemical, any form of physical injury. So thanks to the skin, the body is protected from such injury. Also, you have prevention of water loss. The skin prevents water loss because it is waterproof. The skin also is very important in temperature regulation. If you have heat building up, sweat glands come into place. They come into play. The sweat glands produce more sweat, and the sweat evaporates from the body and cools the skin. Also, when the body overheats, cutaneous blood vessels expand and bring more blood to the skin surface, allowing body heat to be lost. On the other hand, if the body is too cold, you have blood vessels in the skin contracting. Vasoconstriction puts less blood on the body surface and conserves heat. So that way the skin helps in temperature regulation. Also, the skin serves metabolic functions. One of the metabolic function of the skin is the production of vitamin D when ultraviolet light reacts with 7-dehydrocholesterol. That way the skin serves metabolic functions. Also, the skin is important in immune defense. We have what we call the Langerhans cells and the T cells, which are very important in immunity. The skin also is involved in sensory reception. There are receptors for touch, temperature, and pressure on the skin. You also have excretory function performed by the skin. The skin plays a role in excretion through the production of sweat by sweat glands. Sweating eliminates excess water and salt, as well as small amounts of urea, and hence you have the skin serving excretory function. The layers of the skin, you have the epidermis, I have mentioned that before, which is epithelial tissue. You have the dermis, which is the dense connective tissue proper. It's irregular and thicker, I said that before. And then the hypodermis, which is subcutaneous tissue, loose subcutaneous tissue, and containing adipose tissue. The epidermis is a vascular stratified squamous epithelium. It has nutrients and oxygen diffusing from capillaries in the dermis. All these get to the epidermis. You could have 4 or 5 layers in the epidermis depending upon the portion of the skin. That's the degree of friction and mechanical pressure applied to the skin. So in certain areas like the soles and the palms, soles of the feet and the palms, where you have excess degree of friction and mechanical pressure, you have 5 layers of the epidermis, while in some other areas you have 4 layers. I'm going to mention them, the layers of the epidermis, later. You have cells that are present in the epidermis. The keratinocytes produce keratin, which helps protect the skin and underlying tissue from heat, microbes, chemicals, and other form of insults. And this gives the skin. You also have laminar granules. This gives the skin the waterproof sealant property, so that helps prevent water loss. Melanocytes are also present in the epidermis. The melanocytes produce the pigment melanin, which contributes to the skin color and absorbs damaging ultraviolet light. Langerhans cells are also present. The Langerhans cells are derived from the bone marrow. The Langerhans cells are very important in immune response. I have mentioned that before. Merkel cells are also present. Merkel cells contact a sensory structure called a Merkel's disc, and this is very important as far as the sensation of touch is concerned. This is a structure of the skin. You can see the layers of the skin. You can appreciate the keratinocytes there, the Langerhans cells, Merkel cells, and the melanocytes. Then you can see some part of the dermis. The layers of the epidermis. You have the outmost layer, the stratum corneum. The stratum corneum is contains nuclei and organelles which are destroyed by lysosomes, and the cells are now filled with keratin. The stratum lucidum is only found in the palms and soles of feet, 3 to 5 layers, and is made up of clear flat dead keratinocytes. You have dense packed intermediate filaments and thick plasma membranes. Deep to the stratum lucidum, you have the stratum granulosum. The cells in the stratum granulosum are keratinized and secrete lipid-rich secretions that act as a water sealant. Deep to the stratum granulosum, you have the stratum spinosum, where you have 8 to 10 layers of keratinocytes. The skin has much strength and flexibility due to the stratum spinosum. Stratum basale is the deepest of the layers, also referred to as stratum germinativum or germinatum. Some call it the Malpighian layer. Here is where new cells are formed. The structure of the epidermis is illustrated here. You can appreciate all the layers. Most superficial is the stratum corneum, then the stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum basale. Then of course you can see the dermis, which is deep to the epidermis. The dermis is located between the epidermis and the subcutaneous layer, that's the hypodermis. The dermis is important because it anchors epidermal accessory structures like the hair follicles and sweat glands. There are 2 parts of the dermis. You have the outer papillary layer and the deep reticular layer. You can appreciate that on the illustration there. The papillary layer of the dermis consists of areolar tissue. It contains smaller capillaries, lymphatics, and sensory neurons. The dermal papillae project between epidermal ridges. That gives the fingerprint pattern that you have that is unique to every individual because it is hereditary. Even identical twins have different fingerprints. The reticular layer consists of deep irregular connective tissue. The reticular layer of the dermis contains larger blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerve fibers. It also contains collagen and elastic fibers. Also, you have the connective tissue proper present in the reticular layer. Hypodermis. The hypodermis is the subcutaneous layer. I have said that before. It lies deep to is the deepest part of all the layers that you find that make up the integument. It stabilizes the skin. It allows some form of separate movement and flexibility. The hypodermis is made up of elastic areola and adipose tissues. It is connected to the reticular layer of the dermis by connective tissue fibers. It's well illustrated here. Now, what are the derivatives of integument in vertebrates? The skin of vertebrates appears to be derivatives. Depending on the layer of skin from which they are derived, these structures fall into two broad categories. You have epidermal and dermal derivatives. The epidermal derivatives are the ones that are derived from the epidermis and include epidermal glands and the hard horny structures. The hard horny structures include epidermal scales, scutes, beaks, horns, claws, nails, and hoofs. Feathers and hairs are not left out. These hard horny structures together form the exoskeleton. What about the dermal derivatives? These are the ones that arise from the dermis and comprise bony or dermal scales, plates or scutes, fin rays, and antlers. The epidermal derivatives, you have the epidermal glands. The 9 major types of epidermal glands are the mucous glands. The mucous glands are abundant in amphibians. So when you look at the amphibian skin, you have abundance of the mucous glands. These glands may be unicellular or multicellular. They contain granular cells, Beaker cells, among other cells. You also have poison glands, which are found in the fishes and amphibians. The poison glands are modified multicellular cutaneous glands. They are much larger but fewer than the mucous glands. Next, I need to mention the luminescent or photophores. These glands are found in some deep sea fishes. They contain multicellular epidermal glands, and they are light emitting organs and hence are known as photophores. The femoral glands are also epidermal glands. They are found in male lizards, specifically on the thighs. Uropygial glands are found in birds, and they form a prominent swelling just above the tail or the uropygium. You also have the sweat glands or pseudoferous glands, which are abundant in the skin of most mammals. Sebaceous glands are branched alveolar glands opening into the hair follicles of mammals. The scent glands are also epidermal glands and are modified sebaceous or pseudoferous glands found in mammals. Mammary glands are characteristics of mammals, as the name implies. The mammary glands are compound tubular glands that produce milk. Hard horny structures. The hard horny structures include the epidermal scales, scutes, beaks, horns, claws, nails, hoofs, feathers, and hairs. The epidermal scales and scutes. One must remember that the hard horny structures developed by the accumulation of keratin, which is a scleroprotein, on the cells of epidermis. Cells that contain keratin are known as keratinized or conified, and such cells become dead. Reptiles have a continuous outer covering of horny epidermal scales that prevent water loss through the skin surface. In lizards, for example, you have scales which are thin, small, overlapping, and periodically molted in small pieces. In snakes, the scales are overlapping, enlarged on the head, and are called shields. And on the ventral surface, they are modified, hardened to form the scutes. which are very important in locomotion. In most snakes and in some lizards, the stratum corneum of the entire body is periodically shed in one piece at the time of ecdysis or molting. The crocodiles and turtles have large, thick, rectangular scutes. These scutes are not overlapping but touch each other. The scutes of crocodiles are slurred or shed in patches at intervals and are supported between by dermal bones. Also, in the turtles and the rattlesnake, you have the tail of the rattlesnake, for example, having modifications of the stratum corneum, giving you scales and scutes. That is what we call the rattle in the snake. It gives it the name rattlesnake. In birds, some epidermal scales are present on the lower leg, also on the foot and base of the beak. The sheath of the beak is called rhamphorhyncha and is also a modification of the stratum corneum. Reptile-like epidermal scales occur in mammals also, like you find on the feet and the tails of rats. Digital conifications. These include claws. The claws of reptiles, birds, and mammals are identical in structure. Nails are also digital conified structures. The nails are modified structures that come from the claws and are characteristic of mammals. Hoofs are characteristics of some animals we call the hoofed mammals, that is the ungulates. When you look at the ungulates, any animal that is a hoofed mammal that is referred to as the ungulate has a hoof made up of a part we call the unguis and the subunguis. So the unguis is hard and the subunguis is thickened, softer, and touches the ground. The hoofs are found in mammals like the horse. Horns are found in hoofed mammals. There are mammals we call the artiodactyla and perissodactyla. Artiodactyla are even-toed mammals that stand on 2 or 4 toes. If they are standing on 2 toes, you have the remaining toes either as vestigial structures or absent or facing posteriorly. Perissodactyla are odd-toed, having 1 or 3 toes. The other toes might be absent, vestigial, or facing the posterior direction. The horns are present on their heads and form organs of defense and offense. You have 5 types of horns, and not all these horns are true horns. The true horns are true or hollow horns, usually found in both sexes in mammals like goats, sheep, cattle. The prong horns are found in prong-horned antelope, what we call antilocarpa. So the prong horns are also true horns. The true horns are actually product of stratum corneum. So any derivative of the stratum corneum, like the true horn and the prong horn, are both true horns. The prong horns are formed by a small bony core that comes from the frontal bone, which is covered by a hollow and bony epidermal horn. The antlers are characteristic of the deer family. The giraffe horns, as the name suggests, are owned by the giraffes. The giraffe horns are stunted, unbranched, and permanent. They are permanent horns. They are like the antlers but are permanent. The feathers. The birds are covered by feathers which are not found in any other group of animals. Feathers are dry, they are non-living and conified products of the stratum corneum of the epidermis. You have different types of feathers as illustrated on the diagram there. You have the contour feathers which give the bird the round shape, the fine body shape. You have the down feathers which are also called plumbus, and you have the phylloplums which are hair-like feathers. Hairs. Hairs are characteristic of mammals. The hairs may cover the entire body. For such animals, they are referred to as furred animals. The hair might also be reduced to patches like you find in man, and the hairs might also be scattered hairs like you find in whales. Dermal scutes and scales. You find dermal scales of fishes, you find dermal scales and scutes of tetrapods, and you find dermal fin rays. The dermal scales of fishes could be the cosmoid scales. You also have the type we call the placoid scales, the ganoid scales, sarcloid scales, and the stenoid scales. Dermal scales and scutes of tetrapods. The dermal scales or bony plates you find that serve as dermal scales and scutes of tetrapods measure 1 to 2 mm and are called osteoderms. You find them in amphibians, for example. The dermal fin rays are the framework that make up the skeleton of the fin of fishes. Could be keratinized, cartilaginous, bony, or fibrous. Thank you so much for listening. Do not forget to click on the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. I hope to see you in my next video. Goodbye for now.